Hello and welcome. I'm Rachel Rickard-Strauss, editor of MoneyWise. I'm here today with Laura Foll, who's co-manager of Lowland Investment Company, and she's here to talk to us about the outlook for 2019. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. Can I ask you straight away, what do you think will be the biggest challenge for investors in 2019?
I think the biggest challenge in running a UK fund at the moment would be Brexit and the lack of clarity around the outcomes, at least at the time of filming. For that, I think you can see that reflected in the valuation of domestic UK equities. They would be at a big valuation discount to the rest of the market because there is that lack of clarity. So if and when we do get a resolution to Brexit, you would expect that to be a positive period for UK equities. So Brexit, I think, is the main risk. The other one, just a small other risk would be the trade war currently happening between the US and China and the possible knock-on impact on global growth of that. In Lowland, we have a fairly sizable sector overweight to industrials, so we would be impacted by a slowdown in global economic growth. So I feel that's the other area that we need to monitor.
How sustainable would you say dividend income is for UK investors in 2019?
It's an area that I would have been quite worried about a few years ago. If you think about the big dividend payers in the UK, the likes of Shell and BP, when we had the real oil price fall, I think it was 2014, there were quite a few questions about the sustainability of those dividends that I think have now largely been resolved. Those businesses have done a lot by way of cost cutting. So broadly, I feel quite happy with dividend sustainability. I think there will always be a few names, particularly in the FTSE 100, that are perhaps paying higher dividends than they would if they were starting the business as of now. But what's quite nice about doing multi-cap investing, going right down to smaller companies as well, is that the dividend cover does tend to be better when you go towards the smaller end. So that's, I think, one of the advantages of running an income fund that can go right the way down to AIM.
And where are you looking for opportunities?
The domestic companies are trading at a big discount because of the Brexit question. And I think there are opportunities there. A lot of these are good quality businesses, and they are trading at valuations that haven't been seen in quite a long time. So the question that we're wondering is, how much do you want to have in domestic UK? Because if you're a bottom-up investor like we are, that's really where the valuations are pointing you. But then there is this big top-down question of Brexit. So that's kind of the debate we're having. But I think if we were to say where the opportunities are, we're mostly finding them in domestic UK companies at the moment.
So you're still finding companies that fundamentally have nothing wrong with them, they're fine, but they're undervalued purely for that reason, the Brexit uncertainty?
We think so. You've got to be careful, as in some companies you might think look cheap, but actually there's a structural problem there. The retailers, they look cheap on PE and they are domestic, but actually maybe it's not Brexit that's overhanging those shares, but the fact that they're retailers and people just aren't going to the high street as much anymore. So I think we've got to be a bit careful about not going into areas that are both domestic and in structural decline. So we've got to be very selective about where we're going. But top down, you can find some really good quality companies that are cheap just because they're in the UK.
What advice would you give to a beginner investor?
I think the power of compounding would be a good one. So if you can afford not to take the dividend out of an income fund or income trust that you're holding and choose to reinvest that dividend instead, that can make a really big difference to your returns over time. So I think that would be one. And I think my second one would be the importance of diversity. So essentially, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So that would include, don't necessarily hold all your stocks in the UK because of that Brexit risk, but just make sure you're diversified across the globe and across asset classes as well.
Thank you, Laura, for talking us through the outlook for 2019, and thank you for joining us.